Hello, I'm Jeff Paur, Senior Editor with RealTime Fantasy Sports. Welcome to another edition of the RealTime Fantasy Sports Show. It is time for hot plays, fades, and sleepers for Week 4 of the fantasy season. I'm joined by my son, Henry Paur. Henry, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, no problem. Happy to be here.
Always fun doing this with you, Henry. We're going to do it every week until the end of the season, but we're going to give you 4 hot plays, a QB, running back, receiver, tight end, 3 fades, and 2 sleepers to help you get ready for Week 4 of the fantasy season. Should be a pretty good week of games. We were just looking at them before we came on here, and we had a couple we liked, right?
Yeah, there's a couple good ones. We'll start with Arizona and Washington. I think that's going to be a shootout there in Arizona. It's 2 high-powered offense.
Yep.
We saw that potential of Jaden Daniels in that offense last week, and that was pretty entertaining to see.
It was. He's a special player. I'm excited about the Minnesota-Green Bay game as well. I think that should be a good divisional game also.
Yeah, I think Monday night and Sunday night we have great games. Sunday night we have Buffalo and Baltimore, which that should be an excellent game.
Yep.
2 great games. Buffalo's looked maybe like the best team in football these last 3 weeks. They're unstoppable. Allen's not forcing the ball on anybody. Very spread out offense. And then we have Detroit and Seattle. I think that could be a very interesting game. We'll see if Seattle's up to the test. They haven't played anyone phenomenal yet. You can say they played Miami, but there's no Tua there to throw the ball. So I think that should be a great game too.
So it should be a great week of games. Let's get into this now, Henry. We'll start with our hot plays. We're going to go with quarterback first. Who's your quarterback hot play?
Go with the guy I just talked about. Yeah, Jaden Daniels. Arizona. They've been pretty poor this year defensively. I think this week Daniels takes another big step. He had a 91% accuracy last week. He completed 91% of his throws, 21 of 23. And he had a rushing touchdown and 3 for 2, 250 yards. I mean, he looks great. The offensively is coming together. He's just going to keep getting better as the season goes on. We could have another C.J. Stroud situation in our hands this year.
I agree. I'm excited about him. I'm excited about Terry McLaurin finally being involved as well. I'm getting all players involved. Ironically, I'm taking the other QB in the game, and that's Kyler Murray. Absolutely love him this week. I think he's back to his old self after another year removed from his torn ACL. His fantasy numbers actually haven't been great this year. He has fewer than 20 fantasy points, 2 of 3 games, but he has 1 huge game. But the good thing is, I think he looks healthy. I think that offense is starting to come together. He's starting to get a good rapport with Marvin Harrison. I love this matchup. You talked about it as well. Should be a high-scoring game. Get all your fantasy players involved. Washington, 31st against the pass, 255.7 passing yards per game allowed. They also allow the most fantasy points to quarterbacks on this season. So get Kyler Murray in your lineup for Week 4. All right, Henry, who's your running back hot play?
I have a guy who ironically just played against Jaden Daniels. That's Zach Moss. They play Carolina this week. He's pretty poor against the run, especially since losing Derek Brown, that big interior threat. And I expect Cincinnati to get up in this game, but you never know. Andy Dalton looked pretty legit last week, but either way, I think Moss is going to be dominant on the ground again. He should figure to get in the end zone at least one time, get the bulk of the carries and some receiving work. I think Moss had a great start this week.
I like Kiren Williams of the Los Angeles Rams. So the Rams have all sorts of injuries, but one of the constants has been Williams. He has at least 14 fantasy points every game this season, coming off a huge 3-touchdown performance last week. I think he'll carry a ton of the load again offensively this week against Chicago, who allows the 8th most fantasy points to running backs and 121.7 rushing yards per game. I look for Williams to have another big week, find the end zone once again. I think he's a must-start at this stage of the game. All right, Henry, let's talk about a receiver hot play for Week 4.
I have Jaden Reed who takes on the Minnesota Vikings this week in a big divisional game. Minnesota's been pretty poor against the pass so far this year. I will say they love the blitz, so it could factor some things. And Reed's kind of that short, immediate guy, the slot guy in that offense, so I think he gets to have a great week. I know Malik Willis aired it out a little bit more last week, which was a big upgrade for him. And I think this week we get Jordan Love back. And we saw Week 1 of Jordan Love. He had 30 fantasy points, so this could be a pretty good game for Jaden Reed here against Minnesota.
Should be a great one to watch. I love Stephon Diggs of the Houston Texans this week. That's my receiver pick. Season high 10 catches for 94 yards on 12 targets last week. Focal point of the passing game with Nico Collins a little bit banged up in that game. Could be the focal point again this week. He's off to a good start as well. He has 20-plus fantasy points, 2 of 3 games. I think it could be another solid showing against Jacksonville, a team that's kind of reeling all over the place. Defensively, offensively, you name it, they're a mess. But they allowed the 8th most fantasy points to receivers. I think Diggs keeps it going, maybe tops 20-plus fantasy points once again. All right, let's talk about everybody's favorite position this year, the tight end spot. It's been a disaster It's tough every week, it seems like, but give me a guy you like.
I have Dallas Goedert, and I'll leave it as simple as this. Everyone's hurt. And we saw last week Hurts went to him a ton in those situations where they needed to pass the ball. I think he had 10 catches for like 170 yards. So he's the safety blanket for Hurts. They're building an even better connection they already had. And if everyone else is hurt again this week in a game against the Bucs where they're going to need to pass the ball and they're going to need to keep up with that offense on the other side, Goddard's got to be heavily involved.
I agree. I like him as well. And I'm going to go with one of my preseason favorite players, and that's Dalton Kincaid. He has not been great to start the year like many of the tight ends, but he found the end zone last week, started to show some signs of life, season-high 5 targets, finished with 3 catches for 41 yards, just kind of ho-hum, but he has 7 catches his last 2 games. I think that offense is rolling. I think he's going to be involved here because Baltimore has been terrible against the tight end this year. They actually allow the second most fantasy points to tight ends. Also, dead last against the pass. Had to do a double take with that, but they've been terrible against the pass. Allow 291.7 passing yards per game. Maybe Buffalo has to air it out a little bit more here, and Kincaid's more involved. All right, Henry, let's talk about the opposite side of things, the fades for this week. So give me a player you don't like for this week.
I'll start off with Zay Flowers of the Ravens. They take on Buffalo this week, and Buffalo's defense this year has looked legitimately very, very good. They've held everyone on the wraps. I know last week Kirk had a few extra catches, but they kind of were just playing catch-up and had to throw a ball out. I think in this game, they're going to unleash Henry more than they did last week. Henry had a huge week. I think they're going to rely on him even more this week. So I think we probably will see less of Zay Flowers if we hadn't seen that much last week. So I'd stay away from Zay Flowers this week.
I have another marquee receiver I'm scared of this week, and it's Garrett Wilson. Found the end zone last week, which was great. Had 5 catches as well, which is solid. But he had just 33 yards on 9 targets. He has less than 65 yards every game this year. Aaron Rodgers is not taking many chances down the field. He's just dumping it off. They're running the ball a lot. Now Garrett Wilson's going to get shutdown corner Patrick Surtain of the Denver Broncos. I don't think this is a good matchup for him to post a big game this week. It's tough to sit him, but I'm scared of him. Broncos also allow the fewest fantasy points of receivers on the season. So if you have better options, I would really consider them for week 4. All right, give me another fade.
I have J.K. Dobbins. He takes on the Kansas City Chiefs this week, who've been very dominant against the run. They shut down Bijan last week. And the Chargers will be missing some very key pieces. It looks like they're going to be without Alton Slater, their left and right tackle, which is a big loss, as those two have been two of the best tackles in the league already, especially Joe Alt. And Herbert may be gone too, which is another big loss. So they're probably going to throw the ball. There's probably not much work here for Dobbins against a good run defense too. I'd be worried about Dobbins in this one.
Yeah, I would expect the Chiefs to do everything they can to take away the run game and make them force them to throw the ball. I'll give you a running back I don't like as well, and it's Josh Jacobs this week. He actually played just 52% of the snaps last week. I know game flow kind of dictated that, but still, that was his lowest total of the season, and he had 14 carries for just 43 yards as well, which was not good. Emmanuel Wilson, the backup, actually outplayed him. I'm worried about him because he's yet to top 15 fantasy points in a game, despite getting a lot of work, and I think it could be hard going again this week for Jacobs. As you mentioned, Minnesota not very good against the pass, but they're really good against the run. They're second overall against the run, have allowed just 71.3 rushing yards per game. I think Jacobs could have a tough go in this one. I think the Packers are going to have to throw the ball to win. All right, Henry, give me your last fade for week 4.
I technically have 2, but it's based on basically whoever's going to start, and that's Ken Walker or Zach Charbonnet, whichever one starts. They played Detroit this week, who has been by far the best team in the league against the run. They just shut down James Conner last week, completely took away that part of the game for them and the Buccaneers the last 2 weeks. Week 1 they played the Rams. Kiren was also shut down. Their D-line is one of the best in football. No one's been able to run on them. I expect it to continue here, especially Seattle's high-powered passing offense. I expect them to air it out more than they already have, so I expect little things from Charbonnet or Ken Walker.
I don't like Calvin Ridley. That's my last fade for this week for Tennessee. Kind of had some high hopes for him, but Will Levis has been so bad. It just scares me to use any of those pass catchers at this point. Ridley had a game to forget last week. Just a pass caught for 9 yards. He had a huge game in week 2, but overall, besides that week 2 game, 4 catches for 59 yards his other 2 games. He's going to get Jalen Ramsey, likely to shadow him in coverage this week. Will Levis is a mess as well. Turnover waiting to happen. I just don't see Ridley doing much in this matchup against Miami, who have allowed the 3rd fewest fantasy points to receivers. I'm going with somebody else besides Ridley. All right, Henry, let's talk about sleepers. I had a few this week I like. Some guys could fly under the radar. Give me your first sleeper.
So I may butcher this last name here, but I got Xavier Leggetti of the Carolina Panthers. There's no Thielen, so someone's going to have to step up, and why not the first-round pick, Xavier Leggetti? Dalton really aired it out last week. He looked very good, and I guess Bryce Young probably was the problem, it seems like, but he looked good. They're going to throw the ball more probably to keep up with the Bengals in this game with their high-powered offense, so I think Leggetti could be a great sleeper play this week.
I like that pick. I'm going with a rookie as well for my first sleeper, and that's Kiren Williams. People had high hopes on him before the season started, got off to a slow start, but I like what he did last week. They threw the ball a ton. He threw for 363 yards and 2 touchdowns, scored 20-plus fantasy points for the first time in his career. They cannot run the ball, Chicago. They have an awful offensive line. If they're going to win and produce offensively, I think it's going to be through the air. So that means Williams is going to get a ton of chances. He's going to do it again this week against the Rams, who have allowed the second most fantasy points of quarterbacks on the season, 29th overall against the pass as well. So I think Williams is going to get some chances in this one, could post 20-plus fantasy points once again. All right, last sleeper for week 4 for you.
Another wide receiver, and he plays tomorrow night, ironically. We have Jalen Tolbert. He's had 2 back-to-back 14-plus point games. He scored last week as well. He's getting more involved. It feels like he's taking that wide receiver 2 role away from Cooks. Finally, after 2 years, everyone's saying it was finally his year. It seems like this is that year. Lamb's been covered a lot and hasn't been able to do much, so he's going to those next options. And Tolbert looked like he's one of them. And if he keeps getting more involved, the Giants are a prime spot for him. Another great week, so I'm taking Tolbert this week.
For sure, Tolbert's definitely got on the rise. My last sleeper pick is Tyjae Spears of the Tennessee Titans. Spears, he's been taking a backseat to Tony Pollard, but he's been getting some weekly chances. He has 4 receptions, 2 of 3 games, so I like that. Helps his floor a little bit with those catches. And he hit double-digit fantasy points last week for the first time all season. He played near 40% of the snaps for the year overall, so he's getting some work. And I think they're going to want to ease him more into more action to lessen the load for Pollard. And as I mentioned earlier, Miami's really good against the pass. I think they struggle to stop the run in this game. They have actually allowed the 5th most fantasy points of running backs. So I think Spears could get a good workload here, especially with the Titans wanting to lessen all the burden of Will Levis trying to make plays in that offense. So I think they're going to try to lean on the running game a little bit more so they see less turnovers. All right, Henry, that was a lot of fun. Getting ready for week 4. Mm-hmm. Good luck to you in all your games. Should be a lot of fun this week.
Yeah, thank you. Good luck to you as well.
All right, thank you for watching another edition of the RealTime Fantasy Sports show as well, and I wish you a ton of success in week 4. Have a great day.